Welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted on this episode to be talking with author, creator John Claude Bemis. John Claude, thank you for
Hey,
joining.
yeah, I'm glad to be here with you, Jason. Yeah,
Glad to have you. Glad to have you. Also mention fellow educator as part of
that's right.
the introduction.
Right. Yes. All right. Yeah, the fellow educator. So that educators who are also dabbling in creative pursuits. So yes, yes,
That's right. That's right. Now, readers out there will know you for work like The Wooden Prince, the Clockwork Dark series. You have a number of notable titles, and we on this episode are talking Rodeo Hawkins and the Daughters of Mayhem right there. So glad to be talking about the world of graphic novels as well.
yeah. Me too. This is my first graphic novel, so it's been a fun new world to explore. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, in terms of exploring, in terms of thinking about authorship, I am curious, as someone who's worked with young people as well, what makes this sort of a unique space, writing for young people, creating for young people, and I'll even say all ages, because I feel like graphic novels especially can span the range from young readers to older readers whoever picks it up can enjoy.
yes, absolutely. And I always find it really cool when I find adults who have discovered my book and enjoy them. But the truth is, when I'm working on them, I'm really thinking about that younger audience. I had that background as an elementary school teacher. I was a fourth and fifth grade teacher for years. And being in the classroom with kids was that time that I really got excited thinking about writing for that age group. And in particular, fantasy adventure stuff, because when I was that age, it was such a big deal in my life. Those
Hmm.
books
Hmm.
were just so powerful. And the idea of creating stories that, could have that same experience for young readers is something that drove me to get started in this field, but has just continued to be the reason that I just love kind of coming back to it. Certainly, people will sometimes ask me, "Have you ever going to write a book for adult readers?" And it's like, I don't know. I don't think so. My imagination. I love reading those books, and it's but it's such a different kind of craft when you're thinking about who your audience is, and in particular, kind of crafting those books for that younger audience, that upper elementary, middle school age kid. They are a tough audience to write for because you have got to have a captivating story on page one. And I'm a little bit of an
Hmm.
impatient reader like that too. If if I start a book and the plot's just not quite grabbing me pretty soon, or the character isn't just engaging with me, then I hate to admit it, but I'm apt to kind of put it down and move on to something that, and so I always assume my audience is going to be like that too, that they want something that's going to be a lot of fun. You know,
Yeah, absolutely. Getting off the gate is really important there and connecting with younger audiences right at the beginning. But I'm the same way. I enjoy a book that starts and invites you in right from the beginning as well.
yes, yes, yeah, and it's interesting to see. But I work a lot at this point since I'm no longer in the classroom. I do wind up teaching a lot of writing to adults who are writing for the adult audience. And I do have to kind of keep that in mind that that not every reader wants that same kind of story, and that there are certainly plenty of readers out there that, especially as adults, we can be a little more comfortable with a slower build at the beginning, to give it time. But and so it's certainly appropriate depending on that, what kind of novel. But for that younger reader, I love also how that they have that their suspension of disbelief is so much higher too. So they
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
their imaginations are just like wide open at that age. So to get to create, to really get to kind of go wild with the world building and the situations that you're putting your character in just makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, there are a lot of creative moves. There's a lot of multiverse that's happening. What's it like to kind of open the floodgates of your imagination that way?
Oh yeah, I mean that's why I do it. I got into being a writer really just because my imagination was often going to those places. As a kid, as a teenager, and even as an adult, I would find whenever I had downtime, I just had a very vivid, imagination. That kind of inner world of thinking up characters, thinking up situations, dreaming up, you know, fantastical worlds and whatnot has just always been so much a part of just kind of my imaginative life and something that I just would do for fun. And so then to kind of take that and put it down on paper, at finally at that certain point of like, you know what, I'm gonna start to work on writing some of these stories, trying to really kind of craft them and shape the ideas rather than just purely daydreaming about them.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the creative spark, especially getting into the graphic novel space? But as I mentioned there's a multiverse happening here. There are lots of creative elements in Rodeo Hawkins. So curious about that moment of the spark that happened.
Yeah, it's funny how the spark comes about differently for each book. You can never quite predict, when that moment's going to happen where that idea just really takes off. And a lot of times I'll have a lot of ideas kind of just cooking, they're just kind of baking. And sometimes it'll be a world that I'm drawn to. Sometimes it'll be a character, or sometimes maybe a kind of dilemma or situation that might create the core of the plot. That's certainly been how I've written a lot of my fantasy adventure novels in the past. But oddly enough, with Rodeo Hawkins and the Daughters of Mayhem, it actually started with that name. This is the first time I've ever done a book where I had the name before I had any idea who these characters were or what this story was going to be about. Um, and it happened when my daughter was in elementary school. She had, for this kind of class assignment one time, they said pick a vocabulary word and dress up like it. And so she
Hmm.
picked the word catastrophe, and she was wrapped up in like her arm was bandaged, she had an eye patch, she fake blood on her, she's crutch, she was limping, and it looked really cute. So naturally I put it up on Facebook at the time, and people were commenting, but one friend of mine just said, whoa, she looks like a daughter of mayhem. And when I just heard that expression, that was that spark. That was that moment when my imagination just lit up of like, what is a daughter of mayhem? Who could these characters be? And that was that start for where then I was really daydreaming, actively imagining, starting to work out ideas of who they were, what they were doing, and kind of led to this group of girls in the Daughters of Mayhem, who are these scoundrels, mischief makers who travel through the multiverse, stirring up all sorts of trouble. So, and of course, led by Rodeo Hawkins, their their leader in all this. And that was even a name that normally I might have the idea for the character and then give them a name later, and maybe even try out some different names. But that was a
Hmm.
name that had just been sitting in my notebooks for years as a possible name for a character, and never could quite find the right story or the right idea for the character to match the name. And I kept auditioning, I kept playing with it for years and years, and then when that had that moment of hearing the Daughters of Mayhem as a title, is like, oh well, Rodeo Hawkins, that name that is going to be the leader of the Daughters of Mayhem. So
Yeah. That's
weird how.
it's a great. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just say it's weird how the imagination works like that. So
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, it's also a great sort of iconic adventure title. So you have the makings of a title that could lead into a series if you wanted, and lots to explore.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And there is a second book coming out next year, so that'll be Rodeo
Awesome.
Hawkins and the Sons of Disaster are the next installment. So,
Nice, nice. Glad to hear there's more on the way.
yeah.
Yeah, now comics are also this creative space of collaboration. So I'm curious about what that was like, what the process of working with Nicole Miles was like as it unfolded.
Oh yeah, she has been fantastic. I often this book leaves, you know, it has all the kind of magical adventure, it has monsters and battles and all that, but I wanted it to lean pretty heavily into humor. And in that graphic novel space in particular, you know, that you need an illustrator who can kind of help deliver the humor. I mean, it would almost be like if you had written a script for a comedy movie and you get this actor, it really relies on the actor to be able to deliver the jokes once the camera's rolling. And the same way here with the script was, it really was going to rely on an illustrator who understood the humor and knew how to add to it visually, which is kind of reactions, expressions, you know, the kind of visual jokes that go along with the dialogue and the situational jokes. And she just, oh, she got it so perfectly. So, uh,
Yeah.
and I mean, the piece that was just really cool with Nicole, you know, my approach to writing a graphic novel is such that I want to give that illustrator a lot of room for interpretation, for them to decide. I'm not one of those people that really wants to dictate every little detail of it, because I do love the collaborative piece. And so with Nicole, a lot of it was, I was very bare bones in descriptions, especially the characters. You know, unless there was
Mhm.
something, it was a name, you know, maybe an age. You know, like our main character Sidney Poblocki, he's a 12-year-old kid. But otherwise, I didn't give much else, to, you know, as in terms of directions. And so it was, you know, I just loved the way when she did her character design for it, that, you know, what she did with it, and just, oh, this kind of diverse palette of all these characters is super cool. Super cool. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I imagine it was rewarding to get the art back, to see what it looked like as she was
yeah.
imagining.
Yes. Yeah. And even those early stages when she would kind of give, you know, a couple of alternate versions of the various characters was fun to see. You know, the thing is, like with I had kind of come from that part of the children's book world where I had a lot of friends who were picture book writers. And if you're
Mhm.
a picture book writer but not the illustrator, quite often the publisher wants to keep the two of you at arm's length. You know, they want to, you've turned in the manuscript, but they want to just not have that author involved or dictating looks of the book. And that's, leave it to the professionals, the art department, the editor, and the illustrator. So I was a little surprised when, quite frankly, and delighted that that my editor Margaret Ferguson at Holiday House, she would get Nicole and I, you know, on emails together. And really, when we were going through character design, the early sketches, you know, like we just kind of all were putting our heads together on it. And so it really did feel like that fun collaborative process, much more so than I've had when working on a novel. And I'll get the feedback from my editor, but there's something about a team of three of you rather than just two of you, you know, that makes it fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I also imagine once you have these character designs in mind, now that you've seen the visual rendering, that probably adds a lot to the process in creating like a follow-up story, follow-up series as well.
Yes, yes, yeah, and for sure, that was a big part. You know, it was kind of seeing what Nicole's strengths were, what she kind of gravitated towards, what she liked. It certainly helped me think about as I was working on the second book of like, oh, I know Nicole really likes doing, you know, X, Y, and Z with certain characters. It's like, then I'm gonna kind of like make sure that the manuscript delivers on that for her. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, it's like, yeah, it's a whole kind of dance, a back and forth. I'm a musician and I've played in bands before, but I sometimes will just play solo acoustic guitar, but it's a lot more fun to play in a band as far as I'm concerned. You know, you might not all agree about everything, but that's kind of part of the fun of it, is the everybody gets to be involved in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we give sort of resources, places where people can go, anything that you'd like to mention that we've missed, anything about what you hope readers take away or anything at all?
Well, I mean, you know, like for me, I'm writing these books because I want kids to just have a lot of fun. And I want to create just kind of exciting stories for them. And I love how graphic novels, and in particular, it feels like the past 10 years have just exploded. And part of it is, you have this background as an educator, and there was a
Hmm.
time when it felt like people, librarians, parents, a lot of the adult gatekeepers out there looked down on comics and graphic novels and just didn't see that kind of value to literacy for young people. And so I love that we are, at this time when people are really recognizing how important they are for young readers as part, it really helps to, develop so many aspects of literacy. So um, yeah, yeah, makes it exciting
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Well,
Lots of
and
advancement and progress. Yeah.
yes, a lot of advancement in progress, Yeah. And I guess also, I don't know a whole bunch of the research, but it certainly kind of feels post pandemic that, I hear anecdotally and maybe some articles about how some of those young readers kind of got behind. And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
needing engaging stories to draw readers in to become, or young people in to become readers is, I mean, more important than ever. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Lots of post-pandemic resetting for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, but it'll be a while before we see the impact of all that will be long term. But you know, each doing our part to like get readers of all ages excited to read and engage with stories. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, well, as an author, I imagine you do school visits. I imagine you have a
Oh,
very busy time coming up. So, curious about where people can find you, find information, connect with you, and check out a copy of the book and the rest of your work.
for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, my website is johnclaudebemis.com, and, have a lot of information about events I'm doing, interviews, things like that. And I tend to be active mostly on social media, on Instagram and Facebook. So I encourage people to friend me on Facebook or follow me on Instagram, where I share a lot of information about the book, some of the behind the scenes on it. At some point, I'll have to track down that picture of my daughter with the
Yeah.
in catastrophe and put that up as a social media post. So I'll hunt for that. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even a great thing to include in the book is an inspiration point.
Yes. Yeah. It is. Yeah. So, well, maybe by the time this airs, I'll have got it up. So
Yeah,
post. So check.
yeah, absolutely. Well, many thanks, John Claude. Glad that you're exploring the world of writing and crafting, and I'm glad that the graphic novel bug has bitten you.
Yeah.
And looking forward to seeing the next steps in your process.
Hey, I thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate all you're doing, and yeah, thank you for inviting me here. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you.